Alright, Kiss Army, welcome to the KissFAQ podcast. Thank you for giving us your time today and letting us into your head. I hope we don't do any damage. This is a Kiss-related podcast by the board, for the board. We hope that you enjoy. Welcome to episode 133 of the KissFAQ podcast. I'm your host today, Julian Gill, admin on the board. I am joined by Lonnie, St. Louis Kiss.
What's up?
Marcus Almighty Mark.
Hello.
69 Blizzard Ken.
Hello.
And everyone's favorite moderator, Chris. I always like that intro for you, Chris. It's I can see people, there might be one or two viewers whose hairs are coming up on the back of their heads saying, that fucker banned me. And it may not have been him, it may have been me, but you'll get the heat anyway, so I can live with that.
It really pissed me off.
So.
Usually just ban that person 50, 75 times. So
Yeah. Well, yeah, so at least they'll be annoyed at you 75 times over, right? Because some people just don't get the message that it's perhaps time to move on, that it's not you, it's us. And it is you, so there we go. Before we get into today's topic, let's just hit the latest headline. Michael James Jackson apparently has been recruited for the next Kiss cruise, which I think is absolutely fantastic news, as he's responsible, obviously, for Creatures of the Night and Lick It Up, and the 4 new songs on Killers, which came at a really kind of important time during the band's history and tided them over from one era into the next and killed it at the end, where I think he just did the drums on Animalize as well, so that's quite a stretch in terms of a band that never worked with the same person extensively like that in a linear fashion. So any quick thoughts on that addition for the cruise? Anyone? Is it going to make you go on the cruise?
I think it's no, I'm not going, but I think it's great that he's come out of wherever he's been hiding. And maybe he'll answer some questions, and maybe he's going to be open to more future things, maybe expos or who knows what, or interviews, because we'd all like to hear a lot more about that process that happened for recording Creatures and Lick It Up both. So.
Yeah, the work with Vinny, the work with Not Ace, and Bob Mark. You were going to say something, sorry.
I was just going to say that maybe now that he's come out of his cave there, maybe he'll start talking with Paul and Gene and maybe get involved with them with something new.
Ooh.
Yeah. That I mean, everyone talks about new music from the band and the producers, since it probably won't be your favorite producer, and Eddie Kramer's high up on people's lists. I don't think anyone would be too reticent about Michael James Jackson with the run of albums that he had with them. Lonnie, any quick thoughts on there?
For sure. I mean, I think it's great. Anything you can get out of Michael James Jackson, the better. So I think only positive things can come out of it. So whatever he has to say, I think we're all going to be interested to hear.
Yep. Chris?
I'm sure everybody would like to hear more about the tales. I think it was in the Eric Carr story in that book where he discussed that Ace was in some minor way involved in the Creatures album. And there's got to be some assumption from a lot of people that he's getting the timeline mixed up, maybe with some Killer stuff, or because we all know Ace isn't on the album per se, but did something get laid down under basic demo stage that he would be involved in? Because when else would he have worked with Ace to have that recollection? So it'd be great to hear something about that. Yeah.
Maybe someone can get the context, because obviously Ace was involved in the promotion of Creatures, filming the video. So is he confusing that with something in the studio, or Ace coming in for a meeting or something? To the fact it would be great to get clarity on those sort of questions that led to kind of the confusion and misunderstanding. And obviously with Michael James Jackson being announced, it obviously means that Ace is returning to the band in mid-2017, which we will get into that in a minute, but we did just touch on new music, and last night I went to see Iron Maiden and Ghost, and that's a band that's been around. Let's see, they put out their first album in 1980, so 37 years since their debut. They've been around since 75, 76, and they bludgeoned us with 6 songs off their new album. So something that provided a contrast with Kiss. If you remember when we did the show about the Reno show that I went to, I was absolutely giddy that they'd done one song from Sonic Boom in the form of Say Yeah. And last night, Maiden did songs off 9 albums, 6 off one, 2 off the other, and then 1 each off the remaining 7, if my math's right. But I think I'm going to have to say that it was somewhat painful in parts. 13-minute songs like The Red and the Black just are brutal for me personally live. When I'm thinking that you could have Running Free in there. You could have Running Free in the Flight of Icarus, or Revelations, or, still, even with the 6 new songs, good show. It just brings me back to Kiss, and how early on in Monster they did do a lot of songs off that. They never did a lot off Sonic Boom. I think we had a maximum of 3 in a show, and I may be misremembering it. But
Right.
But try and help me here, and I just want to get your thoughts. What's the difference between a band like Iron Maiden and a band like Kiss, both 35 plus years into a career, where one can do a shitload off a new album, and for that matter, still be making albums, and the other won't? Or
there's 2 things, if I can jump in. Number one, Iron Maiden still makes good albums, whereas Kiss are questionable. Damn, and number 2, Steve Harris is a lot different than Gene and Paul in the sense that if he says that he wants to go out and play new material and that they're a band that will continue to play new material off their records, he's going to do that. He doesn't care what the fans say or what the reaction is. He thinks of that as the only way to keep the band legitimate in his eyes, and I think he's right to do that, because that's the only way you move forward. You have to play new material, and otherwise, if you keep just staying with your old material, that's all you're going to be remembered for, And I think that Iron Maiden have a lot to offer, and they still do. Their albums are still excellent. I love the new one. Book of Souls is excellent, and I think that's the main difference. I think while Paul and Gene, maybe in this example, do maybe listen to their fans, that they play what the fans want to hear, so to speak, right? But Steve Harris is a bit different that way. Yeah, he's going to still play the classics that people want to hear, but he's going to push that new record, Hell or High Water, and that's the difference.
Anyone else with any thoughts on that?
Well, let me ask this, Julian. How long did Iron Maiden play?
1 hour, 51 and 57 seconds.
Almost 2 hours.
Around 2 hours?
Yeah. So
okay.
But
Kiss usually doesn't make it to 2 hours either.
15 songs, so same number of songs as Kiss. Obviously, a lot of the songs have extended instrumental passages, the Red and Black being the perfect example of that. And there was one that, I can't remember which one it was. You could actually feel the audience getting a little bit restless. The instrumental section just went on and on and on. I think it was the Red and the Black, and even Bruce was off the stage at that point. You just are not gonna. It's totally different material than Kiss. Kiss isn't doing proggy storytelling. They're legs up in the air, get laid, have a party, have a good time, say yeah, woohoo, yeah. So completely different beasts.
You got 2 different animals because they're going in 2 different directions. Maiden still want to be irrelevant, whereas Kiss, they're resting on their laurels of what they've done in the past. But it's a weird thing because the stage show, the image, that is pretty stagnant. The set list kind of stays the same, but they can't also say that they're only playing the hits because Forever, Beth, there's massive hits that they just don't play. So it's a weird thing that they're like, this is the show that we were doing in '96. And we've now each year have tweaked a little here and there, but they really haven't strayed from that formula much, while still, like I said, not playing some of their bigger hits, which is mind-boggling. It's a very odd way that they juggle that.
No, I think they're very happy and very content being a nostalgia type band at this point in their career, whereas as Maiden is not content in that, and other bands, aren't content in that. I'm going to see Megadeth tomorrow night, and I suspect I'll hear, a few songs off their new album that they're not just gonna ignore it. Yeah, they'll play some hits.
Well,
but
they won't play The Conjuring. Pretty much guarantee you that.
No, but they'll play Symphony of Destruction. You know, they'll play Peace Sells, but then they're also going to play songs off their new album. You know, I purposely haven't looked at a set list because I want to be surprised what it's going to be like when I was 15 and going and seeing a concert, you know? And, you know, I suspect they're going to open up with something off the new album like a band typically does. And Kiss is content with being a nostalgia type band. And like you said, just tweaking that 96 show just a little bit with, maybe we'll put a stack of amps over here and it's a little different and we'll open up with this song and close with this song instead, and that's our new show for this summer. And it's pretty, in my eyes, pretty straightforward what it is.
Yep. You know, both work. You know, Maiden hit you with 2 off the new, then 2 old, then 2 new. I had all the points, you know, and I've got every Maiden album, including the Blaze stuff. I listen to them a fair amount, so I'm not some casual fan, but they hit all the spots. You know how I say when I go to a Kiss show, I got to hear Deuce or I'm not happy? You know, I got Power Slave last night, and this was my first Maiden concert, because I skipped them. When they were touring, I think they came out here for A Matter of Life and Death, and they were playing the whole fucking album. I'm like, I can't handle that. You know, they were doing the whole damn album and then doing a few hits at the end. I'm like, no. You know, the only way to turn new material into classics is to play it. And that was what I felt with Kiss in Reno. That Say Yeah coming back, I was like, wow, it feels like a classic now. Which you can take it or leave it, you know, because I know some of you don't appreciate Sonic Boom. Like, I don't even like it, and that's fine. You know, it's tasty.
They did the same thing with Psycho Circus a few years ago too. It was kind of cool when they brought that back all of a sudden.
Yeah, but it wasn't.
That felt classic when they brought that back.
Certainly wasn't cool when they brought Crazy Nights back. But
teach their own. That's what I say.
Yeah, so it was good. I got Power Slave. I finally lost my Maiden cherry and got to see them live. So bucket list kicked. So let's get into today's topic. But first, thank you, gentlemen, for holding the fort last week and taping without me. Always appreciated that we've got a show that we can bring in a diverse cast of characters on a week-to-week basis and do fun stuff like that. So very much appreciated that none of us have to be here if we can't be. And after the amount of shows we put out in June, thank you, listeners, because we gave you a lot of stuff to listen to last month, and wow, I'm amazed that we could talk that much about Kiss. No, I'm not, but there you go. Today's topic, it's current affairs, and it's kind of going to the board, and it's Ace Frehley returning to the band in mid-2017, and it's a never-ending story. Gene Simmons has a bowel movement and tweets about it, and everyone's like, oh, Ace is coming back to the band. Or Ace and Gene write
Ace
together.
loses some weight. Well, he must be coming back.
Yeah.
You know, so it could fit in the...
What is this never-ending need for people to think that Ace is coming back to the band and going to come in and kick Tommy and say, get out of my boots, and I'm back in the New York groove? You know, what is, Chris, I'm going to start with you on this. What is this urgent need that some segment of fans have for Tommy to be gone, which I just find incredibly, strange.
Disrespectful?
Yeah, utterly.
I think at this stage of the game, especially with Paul's struggles and everybody getting up in age, I think everybody realizes that you're closer to the finish line than ever before, but still, it's getting closer and closer. And the thought of ending it with as many of the originals as possible is appealing. There's no way to deny that no matter who the band is, you just slap the word reunion in any way, and you've multiplied your interest in your live show that's coming up. I always point to Fleetwood Mac recently. You know, what does anybody think Christine McVie draws on her own? Versus when she came back, they exploded and became huge again. So what does being able to pitch yourself as saying, here you go, fans, here's a little piece of nostalgia extra that we're giving you, and come on out and see us for one more time, just like the old days. And no matter what anybody would say about now, I like the band now, I know I like the way the stability, there's still going to be that allure to the common fan, the casual, that's going to say, well, I want to see the old, I want to see the original, the real hardcore stuff that they were known for. So it's always appealing to bring that back in some form or shape. You know, anybody can say that back in 95, Bruce and Eric are leaving. Boy, I'm going to miss them. The band were tight. I really like them. 96, I went to, I think, 5 shows, and I I enjoyed every one of them, and I never saw one person next to me saying, yeah, but what about Bruce? And I love Bruce and love having him in the band. I thought he was fantastic. I got all of his stuff outside. But when you're in that moment and the 4 guys are there, or 3, however many it's going to be, when as many of that original act is together, you put that to the wayside and say, well, gee, thank you for your years of serving us, but now we've got the real guys here. You'd be swapping out sorry guys, an Ace imitator for Ace. Assuming Elvis were still alive, would you rather go see Elvis or an Elvis imitator? It's that. So
depends how good they are.
Extra bit. There's going to be that extra bit of oomph behind saying, here's the real deal, guys, and you can pitch that and sell it, and it garners more interest. It'll jack up your ticket price, jack up your meet and greets. It's a win-win for everybody, basically.
Yeah, but just to go on your Elvis thing, isn't having an imitator a kind of good thing that you can have your cake and eat it? You can go see, Elvis 68 comeback special, or you can go see Elvis 77 hot dog special, or donut special, or whatever he was, whatever he was killing himself. So the fried
stage you want, he's out there
for each state. Yeah, and what always
you want white jumpsuit, you want leather, you want giant Elvis, whichever one you want. God bless him, we got him.
Big collars there.
Mark, what's your take on that?
Well, I mean, I don't disagree with what Chris is saying. I mean, I think that there's a lot of people out there that have that exact mentality, that they want to have those guys back. They see the end is near, so I want them to go out with those guys. But I can't see it happening, because I think Paul especially is at that point in his career where he's like, you know what, I've been enjoying myself. Things have been going good. I haven't had to have any of these headaches that I had when those guys were in there. Why would I bring the headache back now at the end, especially at the end? Why can't I just go out without any headaches? I know you're saying that there might be more ticket sales and this and that from it, but I don't know. I think that it'll be negligible how much they'll bring back, especially if they bring Peter back. I mean, I love Peter and those guys too, obviously, right? But I don't know. I can't see it going from what they're playing now to some huge, 30,000 seaters with those guys back. I just don't think it's going to happen at all,
Nope, probably not. Lonnie?
I'd like to see him bring him back. I think the nostalgia factor would be fantastic. And you could bill it, one last kiss, bring him back for one final tour. Could Peter handle a full tour? I really don't know. But hey, Black Sabbath did it with a different drummer, and they called it their farewell tour, with, and all their promos just had like the 3 of them. It didn't have any pictures of the drummer they were using, but you could still have Eric and any kind of promos in that too. But you could still call it a reunion, Kiss reunion with Ace Frehley.
There was a lot of noise about that.
You could do it, and here Guns N' Roses did it, and they didn't bring back everybody, but they still called it a reunion. So, is it possible? Yeah, I think it's definitely possible.
But you just said something, and excuse me interrupting you, but
sure.
Guns N' Roses, if anything, is a great example now. My kind of opinion on a lot of this is, always fluid by reality and changes on a day-to-day basis. But they brought Steven Adler back in for a few songs at select dates, and
sure.
I think that may provide Peter with,
sure.
a possibility of a way to be involved. Number one, and I have no idea, again, it's just conjecture, is Peter able to make it through a full, 15, 16, 17 song set for a tour with the amount of work that he just recently put in for his shows in Australia and New York? I don't know. I don't even want to guess what his state is. Maybe he is, maybe he isn't, maybe he doesn't want to, maybe he does. We have no way. If he is not, then that would be an ideal scenario, that you're getting one Catman or the other. The makeup adds a problem to the whole dynamic,
Sure.
having Peter show up and which Catman are you getting? But, this is the band that replaced him with his drum tech at a show in makeup and had no problem doing that. So, what is the difference of maybe having Peter behind them for a few songs. We're going to bring out the original Catman now. He's going to sing Beth, then they do Detroit Rock City, then they do Black Diamond and Rock for All Night, finish the freaking set. The encores, basically, with Peter. So, in my mind, that could kind of
bring
work.
him out for Detroit and New York and
could
LA.
be a little bit uncomfortable, but playing the rest of the show with Eric. But how to make all these kind of moving parts work. But let's get back to Ace. Rachel posts a picture of Ace looking fit. Oh, okay, he's dropped some weight, so he's rejoining Kiss. It's not that he wanted to get healthy because he noticed that he was running out of belt notches. It was because he wants to get into his jumpsuit and wear that freaking costume. It just smacks of desperation. Every time something comes up, Ace is rejoining the band. Gene is riding with him. Ace is rejoining the band. Are we that desperate for a reunion?
Well, I'd love to see Ace back. It's just the ego thing maybe is still there. I think Gene would welcome Ace back. I think he would. I think it's just Paul. It's the final decision on it. I wouldn't want Ace back as a special guest. I don't think that would work. I mean, if he played like a few songs at the end of the show, what is he going to do? Come out with, with or without makeup? And it's kind of, I don't know. To me, it's confusing to the little kids. It's like, wait a minute, who's the real spaceman? It's like the Phantom of the Park or something.
Yeah,
one's the stunt
happening
double,
live
stunt
on
double.
stage. They could actually do the fight scene.
Right.
But I think if you're going to do it, you got to do it all out and just have as many original members as you can on stage. Now, as if Peter came along for the ride too, I don't know if he could do every week. Maybe he could do once a week, but he's not going to be on the stage. I don't think at the same time as what he would call imposters of Tommy and Eric Singer. I just don't think he would appear on the stage with them at all. So I'm hoping Ace comes back. It's just he's the original, and no disrespect to Tommy, but I'd rather have Ace in there if he could do it. They allow him to go.
I think people also have a short memory though, because I think that it wasn't that long ago when Ace released the Origins record that he mentioned that he had wanted to work with Gene, and that there was some sort of conflicting schedule thing that prevented him from doing it. So just because he's working with them now, maybe schedules are good now. That's why he is doing it. It's not like some big conspiracy to join Kiss again, I think that's what people seem to forget. It's like back then he wanted to work with them but couldn't. Now the time is right. So there you go. It's not
I think the story was he called Gene. Gene didn't answer, so he called Paul. Paul answered, and boom.
Yeah.
Simple as that. I said it. So, where is it? 24 minutes into the show, someone's going to post that on YouTube now that I said that. So that's my high point of the week. Gene working with Ace, though, for me, was one of those things that I think if we go back to Psycho Circus, that was one of the things I was hoping for out of the album, that Gene and Ace would co-write together. So, better late than never, but it doesn't mean that he's rejoining the band. It's going to be on an Ace album. Just like, what was it, Gene on the Bruce Kulick album, BK3. The same sort of thing. And think of how freaking good that was.
I gotta kill that.
Hello?
Oh, dear God.
Call from Omaha.
This is live podcasting, people.
At its finest.
All right, kill that.
So, someone's crank calling you right now, because they know that you banned them.
I think it was Ace.
The Sphinx.
He wants to get in on the conversation and give us his input. Absolutely.
So if let's just say Ace did come back, how do you handle Tommy? And I'm going to put myself out there as a little bit of devil's advocate and say that I don't want Ace back full time in the band. I still agree with what I said at a previous episode, that I think it's a toxic environment for him, and I don't want to see anything done that takes him from us completely, any earlier than his lifestyle will eventually do. I don't want him to end up miserable. I don't want to see Gene and Paul miserable just because the inevitable that he's got a different manager. He's got a different goal. He's got a different outlook. And just like 1996, even with contracts signed, all the bullshit creeps in. I don't want to see that happen again and do anything whatsoever to affect his sobriety. It's not worth it. For as much as I would love to see the original lineup on stage pulling shows, it's not worth it for me for any of them to see any of them miserable or dead. So,
well,
yeah.
Julian, just as a point to that, what if they did have him for 1 year, and they did one show a week, so you got 52. You're going to hit all the states, like in a major city or whatever, and that one show he has time to rest. Maybe go back home to L.A. with his, girlfriend, fiance, and rejuvenate, or whatever, to keep him away from the just grueling, road trip. I don't know. You know what I mean?
I think Mark hit it on the head there.
Yeah.
That the issues of money would come to the fore again. And I'm kind of including Peter in this as well, because I don't like how Peter's always disrespected and everyone's not talking about him rejoining every time Gene says something. It's always Ace. So I got to do one for the Catman to keep things fair with the originals. Yeah, maybe once a week. I mean, shit. Maybe it could work, and maybe they could do it the same way. But think of what Paul Stanley has said. Every time it's been the same, right? Problems of all. So where are the problems coming from? It's very easy for the fans to automatically blame whichever party they may, prefer least. So it's Paul and Gene's fault, or it's Ace's own fault. It's Ace's manager's fault. It's his girlfriend's fault. That the relationships become strained. Can it not just be, fire and or what is it, oil and water?
Mm-hmm.
Chris.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know if a weird kind of schedule like that works, because again, as you said, Gene is going to want to maximize money, and I think Ace could handle it if you're doing it. I mean, his tours now, he's doing a nice amount of chunk in a row, and then it's done. So he'll do 8 weeks, 10 weeks, and he's hitting night after night, which is fine. I think he can handle it, but would I want to see him back long term? No. I think this is something that you want to wait until the very end. And whether it be the last show with all four of them, which would be awesome if you can actually take them at their word and say, really, seriously, this is it, the last one. Or if you're going to say, fine, we'll bring everybody back for a small amount, we'll do 5, maybe we'll do New York, LA, Chicago, we'll hit some major markets just with us. Other than that, though, I don't know how it would work having Ace with Eric there for a full tour, because as you said, can you trust that Ace will remain happy to be there for that extended period of time? You would hope that with age and with circumstances, you would hope that you would have the appreciation of, boy, it's just great to be back and do it. How long does that last before everything goes down the same path that it has before?
Yeah, I think 2001, when Peter left the band, right? And Eric came in for the Asian leg of the farewell tour, was the one unexplored avenue that most fans, I think, would have liked to have seen that lineup, continue for a bit, because of Eric's drumming, was an improvement over what Peter's was at that time. That he had declined. He wasn't obviously very happy. So it would be interesting from that kind of perspective. I think we're getting into more of a realm of a discussion to the final show and the farewell. How do they finally stop the career, which we have kind of talked about before. I still think they should, people want Ace back in because they want Ace's songs back in the set as a way of offsetting Paul's vocal challenges. That you don't just get Tommy doing Shock Me. You've got Ace doing Shock Me, New York Groove, 2000 Man, and who knows what else. And that could be 3 or 4 or 5 songs now that Paul doesn't have to sing. And they're Ace songs. And, well, why don't you just have Tommy do it instead?
Yeah, the thing is, though...
Because that's not what we want. We want Ace Frehley back in the band.
Yeah.
Wait, you don't want Tommy singing New York Groove?
No.
Rocket Ride.
But I think what people seem to forget, though, too, is all the extra pluses that you get with having Tommy in the band. I mean, even before he became their guitarist, look at all the stuff the guy was doing behind the scenes for the band. I mean, really, what did Ace do behind the scenes for the band besides play? Nothing. Get drunk and fall over on chairs and stuff like that, but that's about it. But I mean, Tommy has a lot more to offer, and I think that's very deep in the mind of Paul and Gene as well. When they need stuff or help with other things, they can always call on somebody like Tommy to help them out. And he's a great guitar player too. He plays the stuff better than Ace does in some regard, in my opinion. And that would be good enough for me. Speaking from a musician's point of view, you want to have the people that are the best performers with you to play the music the best that they can. And let's face it, we've seen Ace play the stuff really well sometimes, and then we've seen him just totally butcher it. Okay, so I don't think I'd want to be rolling the dice at this point in my career.
What does Tommy have to offer right now in the band that Ace Frehley doesn't have to offer in the band?
What do you know that he doesn't do behind the scenes?
I'm asking the questions here. I'm asking you. Don't turn around. What does Tommy have to offer on stage that Ace
I can
Frehley
tell
does
you.
not?
No, on stage, probably a more consistent performance than Ace ever would. Number one. I also think that behind the scenes, they said lots of times that he's helping, being responsible for a lot of the stuff.
Yeah.
With the archive stuff. Yeah, but hey, look, let's put it this way. 150 shows in a row, I guarantee you 120 of them would be spot on perfect by Tommy, maybe 60 by Ace.
Ooh.
You don't know that.
Ouch.
Ace has been playing very well. I've seen him recently playing. He's playing just
fine.
Fine.
his own stuff, but when it comes to playing Kiss stuff with them, and they're kind of playing it, because Ace does, change up songs a bit. He doesn't always play them perfectly. Like you have to admit, when he played like those songs with Kiss, remember they said they had to relearn, teach him stuff back again because he didn't play it the same way, right?
Neither did they. They had to relearn it as well. Remember, let's just keep that
but they're
out
playing
there.
it like. Okay, but they're playing it like that now. Would he be able to go back and play it those ways?
They're not playing it the same way now. They're so down-tuned.
They're not playing it the same way they were in 96.
That's tuning. I'm talking about arranging and
right,
stuff
but
like
their tempo's now slower as well. It's not just the key. It's become a dirge in some ways. There's no energy there in the performance in terms of adrenaline driving the music to a certain extent.
Yeah.
And when going back and talking about Ace in the past and his problems he's had, I mean, he wasn't sober then. He was drinking his champagne or beer every night and who knows what else. Where now he's been sober for many years now, right? So I don't think it would drive him back to drink unless it was a grueling schedule or something that there's that chance. But that's why I said break it up into less shows,
different legs, just some smaller legs, and give them a break in between.
So
one of the things with Ace that again I've raised it on previous episodes is having Richie Scarlett back in his touring band. I've always kind of questioned, is that a reason that if he can have Richie back in and his sobriety survive? Because, again, I don't know what Richie's up to, and whether Richie's just, playing a part, whether he's drinking or whatever. Is Ace staying on the straight and narrow with Richie? Was that kind of an advertisement to put out to Gene and Paul that says, hey, if I can be back in a band with Richie, I think I can stay clean working with you, numbskulls? This is.
I always thought for a long time that's why Richie wasn't in his solo bands, because he didn't want to be around didn't want to associate with and didn't want to have that temptation. But he's proven over the last few years that, you know, whatever Richie does off stage or, you know, is or isn't doing, Ace is still sober and he's, you know, still on the straight and narrow.
Yeah, and,
You know,
and Richie's always been the perfect guitar foil for Ace live anyway, bringing the right sort of gutter sound to that material. You know, that's why I love Richie in the band, because of what he brings to it is a little bit of that Keith sloppiness and a bit of Ace, a bit more of Ace into the band, really. You don't know what you're getting, but you're always getting a guy who's flailing around on his guitar, completely, you know, giving everything to the performance. Mark, I interrupted you again. Sorry.
No, I was just going to say, I'm starting to feel bad for Lonnie. He looks really sad there, and I'm thinking that you really want Ace back, don't you?
No, I'd like to have him back, and I don't see, you know, there's nothing against Tommy Thayer, but what does Tommy Thayer have to offer on stage that Ace Frehley doesn't?
Nothing.
No one
I already answered that.
No one has answered that yet.
I have.
No, you haven't. You said, he does a lot of stuff behind the scenes. I'm not talking about
consistent playing.
Have you seen an Ace Frehley show in the last 7-8 years?
Ace is playing very well these recent years.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
No.
Yeah, Ace is playing very well. You know, one of the things, again, obviously I did see him earlier this year as well. Yeah, I thought it was fantastic. Nowhere near the level of Kiss performance or presentation or anything. You know, it was more like a high-end bar band in some ways. You know, you walk on stage, you don't have all the pyro and production shit to deal with, you're just playing. There was sloppiness, but that was kind of inherent of what I was. That was what I want out of Ace and the band. You always want the guy who was teetering on the brink of falling over. That was what Ace was about. You never knew whether he was going to end up on his back or, you know, just be swaying. You know, it was always what made him unique was not just his sound and his performance, but the kind of unrestrained, unbridled unknown of what he was going to do in a show. Was it going to be a clusterfuck that he just brought back from the edge, or was it one going to be a bad night? So you never know with it, and that's what Kiss misses, a little bit of the danger.
Yeah. Well, Ace has that personality that he brings, and you were asking what does Tommy bring that Ace doesn't, and Tommy brings a complete lack of charisma and individuality because and through no fault of his own, he is pigeonholed. Do what you can, go up there, be Ace. Well, okay, do I want an imitation Ace, or I got the real Ace right here? If Ace is available, why would I not want that? He's playing fine. That's not an issue. If it's okay for him health-wise, why in the world would I want to have a carbon copy imitation as opposed to the real deal?
Here,
no thanks.
Do you want DJ Ashba in Guns N' Roses with a top hat, or do you want Slash in Guns N' Roses with a top hat?
Exactly.
Or Buckethead.
I don't want Buckethead either.
No. But DJ Ashba, I mean, they got to the point where Axl had him in a top hat.
Yeah, but yeah, contrived. But you know, with Tommy, at least you get reliability. You know, it's kind of the difference between maybe I'm trying to think of a car. What's really boring? A Volvo. A Volvo versus, say, a McLaren. You know, one may break down every 100 miles and be really exciting for those 100 miles, and the other one may never do anything of interest. You know, it's
reliable.
Yeah. So why then are they not leveraging more of Tommy as Ace? You know, they seem very keen on kind of, you know, dangling that carrot for. They never come out and say Ace is never coming back. Yeah.
You know what though? At this point, I almost want him to come back now, because I just can't help it. I have my own feelings on the matter. Obviously, you guys do it. I'm not saying you guys are wrong. I'm not saying I'm right, but I'm saying that I almost now at this point want him to come back, because I have a feeling, you know, half a tour through, depending on how they do it, mind you. If they do it how you guys said, like if they do a tour and they bring him on maybe once a week or something during the tour, and he comes out and plays the whole show with them, yeah, sure, it'll be great, and he'll probably have with doing that.
internet doesn't like Mark's opinion. It's breaking him up.
Mark, you've just been censored by technology. And okay, so yeah, they can
enough
always
pro-Tommy propaganda. That's enough.
Yeah.
I've said it for years that I want Ace to come back in the band because don't get me wrong, I like the current lineup. Don't get me wrong, I've seen the current lineup multiple times. But I would love Ace Frehley or Peter or both or whatever combination to come back, and for all these people that have been pounding their fists saying, no, I'd rather have Tommy and Eric in the band, to shut their mouths when Ace Frehley comes back on stage. Or to flip-flop.
The flip-flop will happen. The flip-flop.
That's what would really happen.
But
it's great to have the original Spaceman.
It would be. But let's be realistic as well. You can like Tommy and respect him and want him to stay in the band and want Ace to stay healthy. And then if it did happen, be fucking A, that's awesome. Because obviously it would be awesome. What would also be kind of interesting is if they did the Mark St. John type deal and have Ace do the first half of the show, and you've got Tommy all suited up. They look the same anyway. Come out to do the second half.
The first half of the show, Ace comes out to be a fan of the park and kicks his ass and finishes the show.
There you go.
Like it kind of been suggested earlier, substituting these guys in their makeup, it could become pretty good rock and roll comedy. I mean, come on, this is Kiss.
Like a spaceship lands on the stage and he jumps out, I'm back!
Well, they do have that bazooka on stage, don't they? Sometimes for Eric to shoot. You can have the battle royale, the fight for the lead guitar position.
Well, it's funny because people have mentioned that whole thought of making a changing set, and you have some members at some point and others at another. That doesn't work. If you've learned anything from Unplugged, you've now teased the fans. Here come Peter and Ace. You're doing that set, and the moment Bruce and Eric come back, and it's not meant as a dip, but of course they got booed because you've now dangled the carrot in front of them. And you said, "Here you go. Here's the real band," and whoops, now we're taking that away and we're giving you this. I don't think something like that works because you're now diluting. You already have the impact of here's a reunion with whomever it may be. Let's say we're saying it's just Ace. You can't then have Tommy there too because it just wouldn't work, and the fans would be even worse than not doing it in the first place. You say, why are you teasing me with this and now giving me this instead?
Why can't Ace do the whole show?
Just let him do it. Yeah, exactly. Why have him here if he's not going to do it? I don't need... Now you have the confusion of two spacemen.
Yeah.
You're just making it more convoluted than it needs to be.
Okay, so we are now past 20 years since the 97 show in Columbus, Georgia, where Eddie Cannon wore the makeup. Don't you think that with the 15 years of Tommy and however many now of Eric wearing Peters, that it's diluted beyond all reasonableness, that it really doesn't matter?
But to do it all at a show is different. And now to bring multiple guys out at one point, I think fans would look at it and say, well, why go to the effort of bringing these guys back? You hate them, you can't stand them. You've told me for years how they're bums and drunks and losers. You brought them back, and you're only going to do it for this, and you're going to give me the other guy. So is he still a drunk and a bum and a loser? But we're going to use him for half a set. It just
would make a little more money, so I'm only going to keep him around a little bit.
Yeah, I could pay him half. I could pay him half of his guarantee if he only does half a set.
It would only make sense if you brought them out and then left them out. And why would you bring them out, get those guys off the stage, and then bring them back and swap them again? It doesn't make any sense. Leave them all on the stage then if you're going to do that, right?
Play the whole set with everybody?
Yeah. The last encore with everybody, like how they did it at Unplugged. They brought everybody out for nothing to lose, and
they booed Bruce and Eric.
Yeah.
Okay, so it could be like a magical mystery tour. That now you need is a good Paul imitator and a good Gene imitator. Send them out on tour. You never know whether you're going to get 1, 2, 3 originals and spot the fakes. It could become
the fakes.
It could be a game show.
Barner are doing that now. You got Lou Graham at some shows. The bands are pulling it off. God bless them. I don't know how they do it.
Just 2.0.
Yeah, you have an internet contest. Every night you say, which was the original member in this lineup that performed tonight? Was it Gene? Was it Ace? Was it Paul? Was it Peter? You may win a meet and greet. That's fucking
crazy. I can give that away.
I'm sorry for even suggesting that. It's freaking idiotic.
Gene will take you up on
That's
that.
Brilliant.
But I think it represents the absurdity of the situation with Kiss and just how messy the situation has become. Let's get back to something a little bit more positive. What do you want out of that Gene and Ace collaboration? since Ace and Gene are back together in mid-2017, after all, just not the way anyone expected. What do you want that music to be? What style? Because they've never written together, have they?
Well, I think I can foresee something very more hard rockish and gritty. I mean, Ace has always had that kind of hard rock attitude to his music. I mean, Parasite and stuff like that. And I think that, when Gene's put in the right situation, he can also get into that mind frame as well, right? Like, he does good with songs like Unholy and, heavier material as well, right? Or even like songs like Paralyzed from Lonnie's favorite album there, right? So why not do a song like that? I think that would be really strong for them. I can't imagine them getting together and writing a ballad. That just wouldn't make any sense to me. I think that they would get together and make a real good rockin' song. I think that's what I'm hoping for.
I'm sorry. I'm just thinking Stanley the Parrot. Or maybe Ace should be listening to some of Gene's songs on other albums just to make sure he hasn't, if you remember borrowing parts of Feel Like Heaven on Animal, all of a sudden Ace releases an album with a song and it's got something that he gave to Black and Blue.
Oh, no.
God.
With Domino and what was it, Nasty Nasty or something? I don't remember. It could be
Rip off something that Vinny wrote. That would cause a lot of fun.
That'd be fucking hilarious.
I'm hoping that it like Mark said, I think it's going to be a rockin' tune. Whether it's more Ace riff style or Gene, I don't know. Who knows what's going to turn out like? But I kind of expect and hope Gene's going to do the singing on the songs. I'm hoping he's going to sing lead on both. Maybe they'll have a trade-off, vocal too. That's a possibility. I guess it could happen. But I think whatever it is, it's probably going to turn out pretty good. I don't think it's going to be crap, but you never know what might turn out. But I think they're probably inspired. I think Ace is inspired, definitely. I think even Gene now, with his going out and on the road with his, going back to his old stuff, is kind of, and maybe listening to his old demos is kind of rejuvenating his, his look on music, or maybe even writing music, hopefully. So I hope it turns out good.
Yeah, so I'm going to look up, because I know he wrote something with Ace in '89. I can't remember the name of it. I think it was Hot Lips or something. That may have been Blackie Lawless's collaboration. So I just want to verify that.
Hot Lips.
Lonnie, what are your thoughts on them?
No, I think I'm excited to hear what they have in store. They said they got together and they wrote 2 songs rather quickly. I hope that they're in the vein of a Cold Gin or Parasite type of song. Ace said the other day, I was reading something that said that Gene was, wrote the bridge in Cold Gin, and he just never gave him the credit. Gene never wanted the credit for it. So, when I think of Ace and Gene writing together, that's kind of what I think of. It's just like a meat potatoes type song with a good solid riff. So, and like Ken said, maybe Gene sings it on Ace's album. Maybe they do. A little bit together like they did on the reunion tour, with Gene singing one verse and Ace singing another verse of Cold Gin, maybe something in that vein. So any members in KISS working together and writing together excites me, whether it's Gene and Ace, or whether it's Gene and Paul on a new KISS album. I think any kind, there's just something about that original lineup to me that's very special, and if two or more members can get together and create something, it still gets me excited to this day.
Yeah, so I just looked up, and it was Hot Lips, the name of the song that apparently they were writing in the Trouble Walking era. But I think the hope is that it sounds classic. It it has that, like you mentioned with Cold Gin, the bridge writing, that it has some sort of sound like that. When you think of how Gene collaborated with Bruce and how great that sounded, that just sounded like a classic song. Classic KISS song? I don't know. But it sounded classic. It had a different sort of feel. And how great both of them are when they really do a good song on their own. if he can even get a small percentage of that in whatever they're doing, I would love it. But I don't think the writing together necessarily means that Gene's going to record on it. I would hope, a guest bass, just to hear that Gene Simmons bass on an Ace track would be awesome. Chris, you're smiling, so that's hopeful.
Well, I would hope the most that, and this is against the grade, I would hope that it's cohesive with whatever else Ace is doing for that album. It's kind of an archaic thought because no one thinks of albums as a collective cohesive unit anymore. But I wouldn't want to see some odd Gene piece that doesn't fit in with what the rest of Ace is doing, just shoehorned in there for the hell of it, just to get the promo of saying, here's a Gene song as a selling point. Because that usually doesn't work. I will admit on Bruce's album it actually did, because it was such a patchwork of different styles, and it actually worked in that sense. But for Ace's, I would hope that he could find a way to make it somehow blend with where else he is today. I wouldn't want Ace to be doing a Anomaly-esque album, and then all of a sudden, here's two throwback songs that don't fit in with what the rest of he's doing, just so he can put Gene's name on a sticker on the front cover to sell an extra 5,000 copies or whatever it may be. So I would hope that they can do something that fits in. I'm being generous. So I would just hope for something that is still true to what Ace is doing, as opposed to just a shoehorned throw-in.
That's a good point.
Yep. So now we have to ponder what's going to come of this. Is anything going to happen? Any final thoughts on Ace returning to the band? And I guess let's go into the final show format. Have your views over the past few years, with all that's come with Peter proving that he can perform, changed how you see the end arriving and happening? Is it going to be one of those things? They only have 8 shows, I think, scheduled now for the rest of the year, plus of course the cruise. Do you think that we're on the verge of the end? The end is nigh. And is it time to call it a day? It's very easy to tell someone else to call it a day. Is it time? Have we reached that point?
Well, I think that we are close. I think that, I wouldn't be surprised if they maybe do one more run, leading up to the cruise, and then maybe after the cruise saying that's going to be it. But I've always hoped that they would go out the way we talked about before, where they pick maybe 2-3 cities of importance to them: Detroit, Los Angeles, New York, and do it with the original guys. I have no problem with that if they do that. I mean, I think a tour would be not in the best interest, but I think if they turn them into something special, where it's like, put on, whatever, like they make it into some kind of like a pay-per-view or something, just something more than just a regular show, something that's broadcast, everywhere, or they do it in, Central Park or something, just something really big to throw them off. And, I think that would be the best, because I think that
you're being censored again, Mark.
And oh boy, and I think that people would buy it, if they went out like that, as long as they don't come dressed up as the Who on stage.
Yeah, slight problem, and I'm thinking of the Manny Pacquiao fight a few years ago with Floyd. That tickets, went through the roof. They were basically becoming $100,000 tickets. That if they do any final show anywhere, let's say they do one in New York, one in LA, no one except the Kardashians will be able to go. So there'll be all these fake people in the audience rather than actual fans, which is why, the free shows really appeal to me now, of going out, so that the actual working class fan who actually holds down a 9-to-5 job and thinks about their bills every month can actually afford to see it, rather than, the first 100 rows are freaking hobbits like Kardashians, and which just to me would make me sick to see them ending up with that whole front section being fake Hollywood bullshit fuckwads.
Yeah, well, we had that show way back. We called it The End or something like that. the podcast, and at that time I said Central Park and free concert. And I know Gene mentioned recently that one interview about the retirement's coming soon, and we might do a real big deal, whatever it is, and he said maybe free, and which is like a shock coming from him. So I was like, hey, that's why I was thinking, maybe he watches the podcast and heard me, but
yeah, I seriously,
he's a subscriber. It automatically downloads to his phone every week.
Yeah, God, I hope not.
Hey, Gene.
But I do think they really need to be cognizant of the fact that these big shows have become. They are. Because, look at them. They sell their microphones. They sell their frickin' guitar straps, their drumsticks, and everything. They merchandise the fuck out of it. Are they blind to the point that so many of these VIP experiences are now so far beyond the financial abilities of their real fans that the people who are doing these things, the guests in particular of these big shows who come in, are not the people who followed them for 40 years, who own every album, who do know songs other than Rock and Roll All Night and Beth? Do they care? Or is it really only about the money now, that if they get a 10 million gate, they don't care that there were maybe thousands of fans who couldn't afford to do it and will have to hope for a DVD?
Well, I think that's an excellent point, though, actually, and I think that's why I think that they have 8 more shows left this year in the cruise. But I don't see them saying, okay, we have 8 more shows left in the cruise, and then, let's just do a free concert, and that's going to be it. When they go out for the last time, whether it's 2018 or it's 2019 or whatever, you're going to know it's going to be the last time out. Because they're going to get the last amount of dollars they can get. They can get the most amount of dollars they can get from you one last time, whether it be for one more meet and greet, whether it be Ace Frehley's back in the band, and we're going to charge $2,500 for a meet and greet because Ace Frehley's there too. Don't laugh because it's totally freaking possible. It's totally possible. Why not? They're getting hundreds of people backstage now.
Never
you can put Ace Frehley in the makeup too. And it's 3 of the 4 original members in your picture. Hell yeah! So.
Or maybe you end up like at one of these bands where you have a member who refuses to do the meet and greets. What was it? Rush. Neil refused to do them. Motley
Crue. Tommy Lee would come out.
Tommy Lee.
Yeah. Maybe Ace says, I'm not doing any fucking meet and greets, Curly. I'm doing my own. And they're going to be $2,500 for me. So.
But I think that they're going to let us know when it's the last tour, because they're going to try to get that one big. For you to drop down your credit card one more time, or your wallet, or whatever, depending on your financial situation, one more time, so I can screw the fans one more time, but I can get as much money out of them, and we can retire in as much comfort as possible. I think you're going to know it, and then at the very end they'll do, and then at the very end, then maybe they do for the last show, so we don't have Hollywood starlets in the front row. They do a free show in Central Park or whatever and they can still say, oh, we're giving back to the fans for our one last show, after you just did 40 shows to the U.S. and just took them for every dollar that they had. In pure Kiss form, of course.
Ouch.
I can't see them going out with a whimper, which unfortunately just another tour with this band, with the current lineup, is going to be just that. It's going to be just another tour. And if it happens to end and that is when they call it a day, okay, then they kind of went out with a whimper. That's not their way. How do you create something? Bringing back another original is an attention grabber, no matter what, and that's going to put a spotlight on them and make a tour infinitely bigger than it would have been as just another run-of-the-mill hit and run, whatever they're calling this latest batch of dates. So bring it on.
And then maybe at the very, very end of the show, after the last song, okay, that's it. Thank you, goodbye, and here's Kiss 2.0. We're going to unveil 2.0.
No.
They come on for one song.
That's a non-starter to begin with for me. But I don't
think it's gonna happen.
It's just when I think of how much I paid for tickets the last few outings with Kiss, it's now almost that it needs a fucking installment plan. Yeah. a final outing, if it was, as Chris suggested, announced that you get that much more interest in it because it's another originals coming back into the band. It's like, how the fuck can anyone afford this now? It's just nuts. It's just so down to, the fricking tape on the floor being sold. It's very depressing. It's just very depressing to see now.
I mean, you can buy the Paul Stanley smash guitar. You can buy a Paul Stanley guitar or a Paul Stanley stage played guitar. Why would they retire and not try to sell that to you in every city one last time?
Absolutely, and
there's no point in not doing it.
From the capitalistic point of view, there is no. I don't have a problem with that because I don't either. When
if somebody wants to buy it, go right ahead.
Yeah, if someone has the money to, more power to them. But it's just so crass. It's dirty. It's nasty now for me. And opinions vary. There is no right or wrong on this. It's just, they, as a band, they need to maximize their earning potential so that when they do stop performing, they've made their money. Simple as that. It's like an athlete. A professional athlete gets as much money out of their contracts as they possibly can because they could be injured the next year and done.
And you know what else? Well, you mentioned professional athletes, and there's no loyalty when it comes to professional athletes. No. And money is involved.
Kevin Durant.
So if there's money involved, and there's if there's an offer on the table to bring somebody back, and there's that much more money for one last big payday, what makes you think it won't happen?
I'm wearing the right hat for that conversation there.
There you go.
Steph Curry's contract.
Hey, going off topic, we should have Scott on for this conversation, but Steph at least worked for peanuts for years. So
that's true.
You knew he deserved to cash in. So it's the same with Paul Stanley. It's the same with Gene Simmons. Of why shouldn't they maximize? Do they ever want to work again? No. And do they deserve that money? Hell yeah, totally. They built a brand. They built a highly visible, successful band over 45 years. They totally deserve it. But it still means that the people who really care about the band don't get to participate in it, and therein lies kind of, how do you balance it? Do you just say, well, that's just market economics? I may want a Ferrari, but I can't afford one. Well, this is the end of a band that has crossed generations. So it's not one that we can figure out. We're not philosophers. We're not financial analysts. We're not the conscience of the band.
Yeah, and really, at the end of the day, though, you're not putting a gun to people's head. If they want to buy it, they'll buy it. If they can't afford to buy it, then they won't, right? But
they will. If they can't afford it, they still will.
Can anyone in Detroit afford it?
Probably not.
I think what's going to determine how soon they end this or do a reunion or whatever is going to be all dependent on Paul and his voice. The voice is the key thing here, because I don't know how much more he can go out and I don't know, give a good performance on his songs. It's getting rough this last year. It's quite a difference from last year to this year. I think last year he had better control. This year it seems it's getting out of control now a little bit. So I think it's ending soon. I think he's probably realizing it himself too.
That's an excellent point, because now if you're going to up the price of tickets, do they have reason to up it based on that? You know what I mean? I don't want to go and see a performance that's going to be bad vocally. I want to hear a good vocal performance, not a terrible one, right? No matter who else is playing guitar with them,
Do what Motley Crue did. Samples.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't think we have a choice at this point.
Interesting.
At least he will have sung those vocals at some time to pipe them in.
It's true.
Or have we just now crossed that line and are doing anything to defend the situation? I don't know. So,
interesting.
It's never a dull moment in history, that's for sure. So I think we've reached the end of this one. So let's call this an episode. For everyone listening out there, here's what we want your opinion on. Ace and the Return to Kiss, what do you make of the never-ending threads or conversations that happen on Facebook, Reddit, everywhere, of the moment a picture of Ace is posted, he's coming back to the band, or Gene says something about Ace, he's coming back to the band. Should it happen? How should Tommy be handled? What are your expectations also of Ace and Gene riding together? So, and maybe does it feel that we're very close to the end, and how should it happen now with everything that's developed over the last year in particular? So we thank you for listening to us. Lonnie, Mark, Chris, Ken, thank you for joining me. God, I hope it worked out with 5 of us on this. Never know. So thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time. Bye for now. Thank you for spending time listening to the KissFAQ podcast today. All sales are final. There are no refunds. If you'd like, look us up on Facebook or come over to the KissFAQ message board and discuss the topic we broadcast today. Don't forget to rate us on iTunes, Spreaker, or wherever you've listened to the show. We hope you'll join us again.